cooling and how the colors are shifting. The idea of doing a multiple color sequence is really simple. What we want to do.
What was that? Okay. Hi. I would welcome everyone here. Welcome Nripal. Nripal is with us, and today we are gonna talk about a livelihood which he practices, which is eco-architecture. And I think Nripal shared a lot with us about his story. Very beautiful story how an house made of natural materials stood out in earthquake, and that's how our world starts to acknowledge your work. And I think there's a beautiful message there that how when we do something which is genuinely meaningful, maybe world might not like it at some point, but eventually it does get attention, and that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you are able to do what you do, and that's more important. So I think without me talking too much, we'll welcome Nripal. And I would like to share something which Nepal, I read somewhere from Nepal, that we have to question that it is more around eco architecture which was written, which is like, is it the technique we used to build which is not working, or is it the land which is not able to take the pressure? So, who is genuinely, when we say that, is architecture responsible for things that doesn't work? We just have to look again. So I think welcome, Nepal. Thank you for being here with us. And I would request you to share a little bit more about, you shared about how you spent time learning architecture in New York, and then Mexico City was beautiful with earthen houses. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that shift where you decided to, not that when you chose to jump to art, then architecture, and then learn more like a self-learning mode, then depending on a degree?
See, like since I was young, I didn't go to good school in a way. No, I mean, even though I came from a like a middle class family, they could afford, but for some.
Nepal, sorry, you've been muted. Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah. So, like ever since, I was young, I didn't really go to a good school. I switched many schools because of my father's work. I had to kind of travel around and I went to like, I would say a mediocre school, right? But, and whatever I learned, it was kind of like self-learned, that sense of like, like was, it was not taught, but it was something that I kind of practice. And it's something I developed by myself. Even when I went to New York, I couldn't go to a good school. I mean, I had to work and then go to study, and I had to like do many things. So and I always thought, I always wanted to see life as more holistic, because I didn't believe in knowledge system that is very reductionist, right? I was interested in many things, like I loved cooking, like every morning at like till 11 I'd be cooking. Like I wouldn't do anything before I like ate good food, right? And then I would do architecture, and then I would also love art, and like, but for me it made sense because I saw everything was connected. I would do yoga, and I still do that. I do architecture, and I see a lot of like system in it. I see a lot of connection between all these disciplines. And it is our modern education system that has made us very specialized, you know. And I deep down, I kind of rebelled since I was young, this kind of specialization, you know, like, uh, and when I started my career as a like bamboo, like building with bamboo, I was looking at many different things. I was doing farming also. I was looking at like how to treat bamboo. So I was looking at as a chemist also. I was, I was like reading and trying to connect dots, which, I mean, it was difficult, but it made sense, and I could see the whole world as a system rather than like individual parts. So, yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, so ever since when, I've always wanted to see a bigger picture, connect dots.
Mhm. Yeah, you're talking about these multiple roles. So also wondering, we all are worried about like how we are going to sustain ourselves. So a little bit about, did this lifestyle, did this exploration make you like relook at your financial needs, and how and why?
I mean, I was always curious, I was always like, whenever I was like after school, I'd be like, always, I wanted to learn. I wanted to do so many things. So I would volunteer, I would be like, okay, I'll do this. Can I do this? I do, I even like took workshops on like dancing and some on like cooking and yoga and like, but I would just do things. I would just keep learning. And that was like, I was so in love with it. Like the finances really didn't, like it's sometimes happen like whenever I hate my job, that's when I think about finances. Like they better pay me because I'm like really bored, So either I'd be like, give me a really exciting work, or like pay me a lot of money if you can't give me exciting work, right? If you can give me like very exciting work, I will do it for free. So and the finances was always like it followed rather than like me following it. It's like, I do it, and then somehow like this invisible hand always like helping you, like doing things, and like it's never been yeah, never been I mean, it's all a problem or my priority.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Even, through this space in Alivelihoods, we've been trying to talk about different forms of wealth that each of us tap into, that we take support from, whether it is cultural or knowledge and all these other things we gain. So yeah, have you gained like access to other forms of wealth through your work? And
Yeah, I like the Sanskrit word of wealth, the samriddhi, right? It's um, like growth together. It's not like my growth, right? It's not like what does growth mean? What does wealth mean? If just do I have money, am I wealthy, right? Do I like samriddhi means like sama briddhi, v is to grow and dhi is together, right? Like in your brain. So it's so we are like when you grow, like am I just how am I growing? Is my body becoming better? Right? Is my mind getting better? Do I feel more energy? Do I feel, so that's been like, and I feel very wealthy in that sense, like whenever I go, I told you, like, I've been working for 15 years. Every day I go to work, I go like, wow, I love this. It's so exciting, and I meet so many different people. I work with like so many amazing artisans. I work with like, yeah, I mean, for me, that's like wealth is time, like, how I spend my time, how I spend, like, what kind of food I eat, what kind of like, like living this holistic life. For me, that's wealth. And luckily, I've, been wealthy enough to have that.
yeah. Well, thanks. We get to know a little bit about your mindset better. And yeah, I think a lot of the participants would be also interested in you as an eco-architect. So from what we heard, that Abari does a lot of work with bamboo and earth. If you could tell us a little bit about, what's the crisis here? We see more and more skyscrapers, we see more and more pakka houses, and people think that this is the only way. So how have you, through your work journey, been able to explore these sustainable materials and how they can be adapted to the modern needs?
See, a lot of my work is very visual, right? So let me do a small PowerPoint presentation. I'll show you like some of my, and then like we can, So feel free to like interrupt anytime, you know,
Yeah.
so I don't want it to be a monologue.
Okay.
So let me try to share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to talk about rebuilding Nepal. I mean, it's more, I'll talk about more in general. Let's see. So as I said before, you know, I was very fascinated by architecture without architects, you know, like, you know, these, like this is a beautiful earthen house in New Mexico, which really inspired me to take this as a career, you know. This is not built by architects. This is built by community. It's very organically grown. I mean, it's like you go inside, it smells so good. The weather outside is hot, but then you're inside. It's a different. It's like being in mama's womb. You know, it's like such a nice thing. You know, it feels like very, you know, like real. And like so, whenever I traveled, and I would always be like, I didn't care about cities. I hate cities. I think these are like, you know, cities for me is kind of analogous to cancer. You know, it's like growing for sake of growing. You know, it's like cancer in our landscape. You know, this concrete is coming everywhere and growing and growing and growing. But you know, like these kind of buildings, you know, like 100 years later, if it goes bad, you don't see any trace. You know, it like blends in so well with the earth. And so, yeah, I was like, so these are like beautiful, like woven structure from Rwanda, you know, like it feels like you're inside a basket when you're there. Right? And then this is a building in Yemen, which is like 9 stories tall. And I mean, perfectly air conditioned naturally and earthquake resistant. Looks beautiful. And I'm like, when you look at these buildings, it's like, you know, people say, oh, can we live in modern context? Can we go higher? Don't we need more vertical space? But, you know, like people have taken care of these problems way before, like the modern times, right? There is the technology out there. It is only our modern perception, modern thinking that things like past is an embarrassment, you know, and future is, you know, so, and this is, we've taken that paradigm, you know, like, you know, it's that past is an embarrassment, and we've never looked at these materials critically, you know. And so I don't mean to say like we have to go and live in those houses, but we can make that as a departure point, right? So, and when I came back to Nepal, I started documenting all these structures, you know. And when people build in like this in traditional setting, they don't just build it because the material is there. There's a lot of sense of design, there's sense of identity, there's sense of, you know, problem solving. Now the answer, the solution is only problem solving. Okay, I need a house. This is a square foot I have. How do I maximize space? But before it was much more holistic, you know, it was much more ritualistic, how people like saw architecture, you know, they saw it as part of their extension of their body, you know. So
It is very aesthetically pleasing.
yeah, I know. And these are like, and these houses, you know, like this is a house like just north of Kathmandu. And, you know, this house would cost virtually nothing to build because the earth comes from like just right under your feet. And there's a local forest nearby. So they would get wood from there. And, you know, they would like get some scrap woods and then burn and make those Roman tiles. And the neighbors would come and help in building the neighbors' houses, right? So it was like a process. It's called perma. So you'd build a house, and then you are supposed to go and build their houses. And so everyone has like a beautiful 2-story house, enough, but it costs nothing. And now, like, if you want to build a house, you're in debt for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And, like this is my house in the mountains where there's nothing, it's desert. Right?
Prachna, can you record the session?
It's being recorded.
Yeah, so it is like, this stone building, and it's, it's in desert, and they just so beautifully built with this band, so it makes it earthquake resistant, and this is my favorite like ritual. It's in South Nepal. We see maintenance as a chore, like people want to go into concrete because, oh, I don't have to maintain. But people back then didn't see maintenance as a chore. They saw it as a ritual.
Yeah.
Right. So there'll be monsoon rain, and then like the painting would like fade off, and so there's the festival called Chhat. So they would and then paint like these beautiful paintings with like natural dye and like beautiful like, and then next year again after rain you would, but then they would build again and again. So they saw architecture as human body that needs attention, care, and makeup, and it was, and yeah. So I was drawing a lot of inspiration from these structures, like, so there's this building, a bridge from 1800s, this bamboo bridge, 30 meters long, like great engineering. But what happened is we stopped teaching this in engineering school because tradition is an embarrassment. So the people stopped looking at this engineering, and then they started, and the government made everything illegal. They say, oh, cutting wood, it's bad for environment. Cutting bamboo is bad for environment. Like, so they made all these regulations. So this tradition is lost. If people were able to build like such beautiful bridge, like, 200 years ago, and like you would imagine you could build much more better bridges now, right? But I'll show you a picture of this bridge in the mountains. Like this is happening now, so there's no resources. The government has banned like felling wood. So, and so they have to buy this like steel cable, and like kids are crossing, the river like this. And it's really tragic,
Yeah.
So I'm just the simple data, even in Nepal now, there's like 80, only 17.6% of the houses are built with concrete. 83.4% is still earth built, right? So, in like many parts of the country, it's still built 75% or more are just earthen houses. And so I looked at this and said, and this is what we call modernization, beautiful historic town of Kathmandu, it's a UNESCO heritage site. It's the only place that has highest density of heritage sites, 10 heritage sites in a small area. But this is what we've done in the name of development, right?
Yeah.
So I was looking at this and I'm like, there needs to be an alternative, right? So how can we change? So then I started, before I move on, like, people are building with earth because, concrete, because they think it is stronger, it will last lifetime, right? And this is what happened to concrete buildings right at the epicenter. It just collapsed, boom. Like, this is their life worth of saving. It just goes down in a few seconds. This is a big propaganda that concrete is, the most strongest building material on earth. It is not. It is like a death trap. After the earthquake, people were like, saying like, we took out so much loan so we could build a a tomb for ourselves, this like concrete. It's like, and while like this is another building very close to the epicenter, built with traditional technique, and it survived the earthquake. Imagine if this building had collapsed. People had the skills, the materials are reusable, so the villagers would come together and rebuild again without any debt. But in the example before, nothing is reusable in the concrete building. So when you rebuild, you have to, dispose it, rebuild everything, and you take so much loan. And after the earthquake, the most tragic part is the government really discouraged and many times banned traditional constructions like this. And now, people have built like these 2-block concrete houses, and people are in debt. The houses look ugly. They don't do any function, like it has no character, So anyway, so what we did is like try to make a social enterprise which looks at traditional material, and our aim was how we can make it relevant in the modern context, in contemporary context, right? We are not conservationist, we're not like, okay, this is a really old house, how do we conserve it? We wanted to be like, how do we take a traditional material, traditional technique, and put it in a modern context? How do we keep the tradition alive? That was our intention, not preservation or conservation, right? It was. So the first thing we looked at was bamboo. We didn't want to use wood because we believe wood is a great material. It regenerates, not like steel. Steel doesn't regenerate. Wood regenerates. Concrete doesn't regenerate. But wood, there's a lot of regulation, and government was not allowing wood. So I looked at bamboo.
Yeah, sorry, Nripal. So there are some questions in the chat about this government ban that you have mentioned. So people are asking that why this ban? Was there a lack of knowledge? And also more about this building that you showed us that survived the earthquake, like the technique and materials in that. So you could slightly address that before you go on.
The ban is, because they think it is, they put this data, there's a lot of casualties with in earthen houses. But if you look at the data, but yeah, there was a lot of damages in earthen houses, like this traditional houses. But the one is because there were damages because their numbers were higher. Right? They were like I said, 83% of all the total houses were built with this. So their numbers were higher. But secondly, many of these traditional houses, which were built in last, say, 20 years, they did not put these earthquake bands, which were usually made out of wood, because wood was banned because of conservation. So that's why, it was not reinforced, so things started falling, right? So they showed this data and said, oh, there's so many damages, so we need to build stronger, build back better. That was their logo. And then they made people take so much loan and build concrete houses, right? And the second point is, there was a pretty big earthquake. It was 7.8 Richter scale. It was one of the highest in recent history. But if you look at the amount of casualties, it was only 10,000 people that died. While same earthquake in other regions, like 100,000 people, 120,000, like 200,000 people have died. So these buildings, even though they collapsed, they were built in such a way that it would collapse, like the walls would fall outside, or, like it was designed to take the shock. It was not like, like many people think the strongest house is that doesn't move or move, but that's not true. The strongest house is that moves, that's ductile, that allows that shock to come and diffuse. You know, like if you look at like modern engineering in Japan, like these skyscrapers, they survive earthquake because it's not because it's rigid and like strong. It survives because it is ductile, right? And these people had used these techniques and made ductile structure. Yeah, there were cracks. You know, the roof, the gables would just come out like this. But that was intentional. That was done by design, right? So, so people, the government didn't understand this, didn't want to understand this, didn't listen to. So, and they said, no, we will make sure that everybody buys concrete and then builds like back better. So that was the reason they banned it.
Also, from what you said, that actually it's the cost of building back an earthen house would be so much lower than trying to rebuild with cement. And I guess bamboo is another such fast generating, easily available material.
As I said earlier, you know, traditionally, when people build like a house like this, the only cost that would incur is, you know, like even like if you go 10 years, 15 years, or even some parts of the Nepal, it's still practiced. Like the only cost would be like you'd have to, you know, like sacrifice a small goat as a feast for your neighbors. You know, they would come and help out, right? So like literally there was no cost. And now, you know, now times have changed, you know, people are migrating, so you need to pay for labor. So the only cost that you pay for is labor cost, right? When you build a house like this, your cost would be like, let's say 3 lakh rupees. And that cost would go into like labor cost. And I say that is a good cost because the money is staying locally, right? The community is like the community artisans are making the money. You know, it is preserving that craft. But now what people have done, what the government has mandated through World Bank and ADB, is like make this 2-room concrete house, 400 square foot concrete house, you know, and they've given 3 lakh rupees. And out of that 3 lakhs, like 70% of the money goes in material, and that is industrial material, you know. And that investment has no value addition to any craft sector. It doesn't positively impact the community. You know, it's bad cost, you know, the cost is going towards like degrading our environment.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then to add to that, so it is, like you said, it's all about, it's the right labor. So I think most participants would like to know, like, how can we learn these skills? How can we go about experimenting with what is locally available in our areas?
First is we have to listen to like our like craftsmen, you know, like our artisans who are there, you know. So it's not like a concrete where like one solution fits all, you know, like stone masonry in like, let's say this region is totally different from another region because the kind of stone is different, right? Like the engineering of like, you know, like here maybe their major concern is earthquake, so they're putting bands. In other places their major concern could be flood, so they would want to make a very lightweight structure that, you know, if the flood comes nothing would happen. So, you know, these are like embedded knowledge which is with the community, you know. So what we need to do is first observe and go to communities and ask like how they build and, you know, learn from them. And also second is, you know, like communities are also not monolithic. They've also changed over time. And many of the changes have is because of government regulation. For example, you could see a traditional house like this, but which might be different than like a traditional house 100 years before, because in the in between period, government stopped people from using wood, right? So we'll have to also look at critically like how societies have changed and like what are the problems. So I don't go back and say, okay, just go build as how they built 50 years ago. We can take so many things from them and add our modern elements. We need, like, we live in modern times. We need plumbing. We need we need lights, because before people didn't spend so much time in these houses, so they would spend times in the houses, so the windows were small. But now we spend most of our time inside a building, so we need bigger windows. So we need to kind of reappropriate with time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think is the first, to answer your question, we need to have that dialogue. Yeah.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what I see from chat is that questions are coming in, but we would also like to see more of your work and the presentation, which you were just about coming to.
Yeah, so as I said, the wood is banned, in the regulation, there's so much red tape. So I looked at bamboo, and I was like, I was traveling around and I'm like, looking at material, and it's an amazing material, it is, it is hollow. So it is basically like many cylinders that are glued together, in engineering world, like the cylinders are one of the strongest materials, right? And this is one step ahead because it is composite of cylinders, right? Like so many tubes connected together, so it's an amazing material. People compare bamboo with steel, but that's a wrong comparison. Bamboo is much better than steel because steel is heavy. It is strong, but it is heavy. Bamboo is strong, but it is light. It's such an amazing material. And so these hollow tubes, they're connected, so it makes it flexible. So if there's an earthquake, it can wobble and come back to shape. And and it's fast growing. Like bamboo is literally grass. It's the same grass family, so it grows really fast. But the only, and I talk to people, I'm like, hey, why don't you use bamboo? They said it is a very strong material, no doubt about it, but it does not last long, right? That was their major concern. So, and I'm thinking like there should be some way to make it last longer, right? So I started exploring that. That was the biggest hurdle. So I did an experiment. And the second problem was the joinery, right? The first, let me go back to treatment. So, these hollow tubes are very strong, but these tubes,
Is your phone nearby? It could be from your phone or someone else's.
I think it must be someone else.
Might be someone else's.
Yeah. So
sorry. 1 second. Meena?
No, it should be okay now. I think it was a participant's phone echoing and she
Okay.
muted herself now. You'll be
Okay.
good.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, treatment, like it has all this starch, these tubes have starch inside, right? And the starch helps in that vigorous growth, like sugar, like it helps in that growth, but it also deters it from its life, right? Long life. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something we can do about it. So I was like, I try to, traditionally what people do is like submerge bamboo in water. And since sugar is water soluble, the starch would go dissolve. But then, that was, I mean, it would take a while. You have to submerge it for like weeks, and so that was not practical. And then the other option was to So I started making holes in the bamboo and then started adding some preservative, but that was also not possible, like feasible. And it was possible, but not practical because, our bamboos are crooked and stuff. So I was like, so then I started looking at an alternative. So I hacked a system. I took a small cylinder, which has pressure. And so I opened that, made a small hole, added preservative and closed it. And in that cylinder, I added preservative and I took out a pipe and connected to the ends of bamboo, and it was like, so this pipe would connect to the ends of bamboo. And with this pressure, the pressurized liquid, the pressurized preservative would go through the bamboo and push all the starch out, right? It was like a big success. It was so simple that you could just carry around. It cost nothing to do. And it was like, wow, it was like a big turning point. So then I started like, using bamboo, it gave, so from a bamboo that's 3-year-old, now whose life would be only 3 years, was now like 30, 40 years. It was like, boom, like small intervention could make so much change. That was like a big learning point, like tipping point for us. So as I said before, like we have to wear different hats. So I'm like looking at like the problem, talking to people and coming up with solutions. So yeah, so that was a major problem. One was like the durability of bamboo, and then the second was connection of bamboo. So we started making different kind of joints, experimented with the joints. These, after we did these 2 experiments, we were ready to roll, right? And so
sorry, someone is asking what this technique of treating bamboo is called.
It's called boucherie technique.
Okay, and are the preservatives cost effective?
Yeah. You can use just salt or,
Okay, yeah. So eco-friendly preservation. Yeah. Okay.
You
All
can
right.
use neem,
Thanks.
you can use, any preservative.
Okay.
So, we did that project. I mean, so I did that. So it was like, okay, I got that confidence. Now it's time to build. And I wanted to build community halls, because I knew, like, as I showed earlier, like traditional houses were pretty beautiful. And so I didn't really think they needed my service. So I wanted to build like a bigger space that was, use traditional material that is cost effective, that's comfortable to be in, inspiring to be in. So, and then, so this was my first project, like we, bundled bamboo together and then like made a big hall, and it cost like, that time it cost like maybe 6 lakh Indian rupees, right? It's pretty big hall, like 2,000 square feet, and like 30-40% cheaper than concrete building, but much more interesting. And I was like, before, when we built this, the community was like totally against it. They're like, we don't need to live in a bamboo and earth house. We've lived in one for hundreds of years. We need concrete. But then we built this. It was like, boom. It was like, they were like, yeah, this is different than what we thought, right? But still, this was a donor-driven project. So it was like somebody else was funding it. So the community was, their aspiration was still concrete. But, but for our first project, it was not bad. And then we built the second project. And, my interest was to build schools, as in India and like same in Nepal, like, our government schools are pretty uninspiring. It's made with concrete blocks and then has a metal roof on top. And when it's hot, it is very hot. When it's cold, it gets very cold. And it's dark inside. It's not very inspiring to be in. and the cost is all going to some industry, you know, so I wanted to build something like a school that uses local materials. So, you know, we use local stone, we use local bamboo, we use local slates, everything, you know. And then it was a small buildings, you know, we put open space in between. It was like, you know, and, you know, like inside we did mud plaster, you know, there's even the windows, we use like the drain pipes, you know, like from, and then we use recycled bottles to put some light, and, you know, like to get, like to make it airy, and, you know, like it's a very poor school. Before this, they were like literally under like a tree. And so we made this school at a relatively low cost. But it was like a lot of work for us, you know, to want to convince people, the logistics, blah, 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 blah. And I was kind of like, I mean, I liked the result, but I was kind of hopeless. And what happened is, like, this building happened to lie right at the epicenter of the earthquake. This is the building I was talking about. You know, this was the only building that survived the whole region. I was like, boom. All of a sudden we were like, you know, we became famous, you know, like people are talking about us, and they're saying like, you know, that building with earth and bamboo and stone can survive the most severe earthquake. And so, yeah, after this, we got that. It was like a vindication of our philosophy, that you can build something beautiful, something safe, something that is traditional, something that's cultural. And so, yeah, we built this. And after that, we were like, okay, you know, like we had more listening ears, like people started listening to us, right? So what we did is, after that, we made a simple design, a modular design that can be replicated all over the country, and using bamboo and earth, you know, traditional materials. So we looked at how the air flows, how the light comes in, like what kind of paint we can do, you know, what kind of insulation, like, you know, we looked at all these factors. And it was like, you know, we were pretty surprised. The government approved it.
Okay.
And it was kind of interesting moment, because when we went to the authority that approves buildings, their building was cracked, you know. It's a concrete building that was cracked. And then we go and saying like, you know, you have to approve this. Now you've lost your credibility, you know. Concrete is not like almighty, you know, like. So yeah, they were like, you know, pretty positive, and they approved it. Boom. It was like, I think it was one of the first times in the world where earth and bamboo building was approved as a public building.
Yeah, maybe that answers an earlier question also that came up, which was as to how did you go about getting initial projects? And I think you answered that for us. By having that earth resistant building, it automatically brought things in. Here's another little technical one about why we need the metal roof layer.
We don't need we don't need the metal roof layer. We put whatever roof is available. Sometimes we use, if the area has Roman tiles, terracotta tiles, we use terracotta. If they had slates, we use slates. If it has nothing, we use metal. Sometimes we use bamboo roof. So it depends on, it's site specific, you know, it's context.
Localized. Yeah. Just wanted to remind you that we are almost done with time. So I was just wondering how many more slides you have.
Okay, I will
and then I have a few questions for you still. So
okay, I'll just rush through if we are limited with time. So, you know, so we made this design, you know, flexible design. And then we started building, you know, like this is like, you know, like with earth and bamboo, you know, like this is what the classroom looks like. You know, it's so nice. Like people say, the students say one student said it feels like they're under a basket, you know. Like, this with light coming in, and with the temperature difference is more than like 10 degrees, you know, it's very comfortable. And then, these bricks are so easy to make. The local women are making it, like we made the small machine, like, they press it, boom, the brick is there, And as I said earlier, the 89% of the cost is staying locally. So it's a good cost, whatever the cost that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, then we got to build a public library right inside Kathmandu. This was after the earthquake.
Wow.
It was like, wow, yeah, it was. It was like a vindication, to build a public library right in the center of Kathmandu was like our dream. 5 years ago, we would have been like, it was like a dream. So, and we built this, we even were the finalist of Global Emerging Architect Award for this, it's like a pretty big moment. And so, like this is the building, like this is the traditional joint. This is, this building, like such a building in the center of Kathmandu was like, wow.
Wow.
And so, and then we getting more ambitious, we're building more schools now. This is another school we just finished with earthen walls, like with bamboo roof, glass windows, a lot of open space, a lot of nature in between, a lot of circulation space. Like we try to integrate outside with the inside, collect all the rainwater, like all this. This is pretty spacious,
Yes.
and it smells so good, this earth.
Yeah. There was another question also about vertical, like how these buildings look taller. So are some of them 2 floors or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Up to 2 floors, it can hold its own weight.
Okay.
After that, we need to like reinforce more. Yeah. Okay. And so, yeah. And so, yeah, these are like some of our new projects. So, and also, what I've kind of like discovered is over this period is like building house is such a fun work. It does not cost money, does not cost a lot of money. It's so good for your environment. It's so good for your soul. Like last 4 years, I built like 4 houses, like boom, cost like, and like the people in our team have built their own houses. We've like, because the industry makes it so difficult to build houses because there's so much money involved. So this is an earthen house after the earthquake. People were building, like government was giving loan, and we said no. You can build beautiful house with very low like budget. So we built this in the mountains as an example. And this is a house we're building in the plains, like a 2-story house, which costs like very little money. And so to end the slide, so we look at these materials, but we also look at where the material comes from. What is important, but where it's coming from is also important. So we have a project in Chitwan with our like a beautiful team. So what we do is like, we're planting bamboo along this river bank, right? So this is a river bank from, I think it was from 2009, it's like, and 2009, 2010, there was a big flood. You can see all this white area that's flooded. And then we started planting bamboo. And then in 4 years, this is what happened, the green area. And now it looks like a vibrant forest, the birds are coming, it's chirping. So it's an economy, which is good for the community, it's good for the planet, it's good for everyone, So, I mean, our economy doesn't have to be extractive.
Wow.
So we are like, we're not limited to, like, my goal is in life, you need 4 things, like gas, bas, kapas, right? Like food, shelter, and clothing. And we also need transportation, right? So we're building like now bamboo bicycles, so we don't really need like any outside intervention, so we're like, people are making their own bicycles. So, anyway, so I close my presentation here so we can have more conversation.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I think, one big thing comes back to someone was asking when you're starting Abari in India. So one big thing that you told us is about going to communities and learning the local skills from our rural areas. But other than that, we are more urban audience. So what other access do we have? Does Abari offer internships where people can come and learn more?
We are, so one is, so most of the school buildings I showed now were like schools, but I live, in urban area in Kathmandu now. I'm living in an earthen house, at a bamboo house, so it is possible. It is, so what I tell people is, it is not a technical problem that you cannot build with earth in modern context. It is our perception. It is what they've been told to us, because if you build with earth and bamboo, like industries can't make money, right? So they have to say that you can only build with this material. You can go high, you can totally build in urban areas. You can go vertically. Yeah. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
it's coming back to how we can learn. Where do we go to learn?
first is to unlearn, right? We have to unlearn. We have to take all our biases. Like building, I think is one of the most fundamental human activities. They say even monkeys can weave, right? So building is a very innate in us. So we just have to kind of like bring that out, right?
Yeah.
Like, once you build, you're truly empowered. You're truly swabhiman,
Yeah.
And to learn, one is, we do offer internship and we do have some trainings. Yeah, you can contact us, but we have limited space, right? We cannot contact huge, like thousands of people. And so, so that's, but I'm sure there are a lot of people like doing interesting stuff, like we can look, one good thing we can do is like find local artisans and like encourage them, that's a great way of learning, preserve their skills,
Yeah, another one is about whether urban bylaws support eco-construction. Now, you might have the answer to that in relation to Kathmandu, but yeah, it could build some context.
Yeah, it's really funny because, like even though earthen buildings have survived, it's more than like actually the oldest surviving structure on earth is built with earth. Like the oldest pyramids were built with earth. Even though we have track record but many times the government makes it very difficult. But so what we do in certain urban areas, if we want to do, we make a hybrid structure. Our goal now is to kind of reduce sometime if we can't replace. So we work with like steel or, so we get the bylaws passed, sometime if we want to go multi-story. But the main, the walls are with earth, but the structural element is modern materials. So sometimes that's how we get around bylaws. And I'm sure you can do that in India too.
Sure, yeah. So there were a lot of questions about materials, about joineries, about insulation. And I was just wondering, are there any places we can read and learn more?
You can visit our website, and second is, there's tons of information out there, so it's not, it's, people come and tell me, oh, what is the recipe for this? What is the recipe? And I go like, there's no recipe. What you need to know is the principle, like, so, yes, so that's how I teach people. It's like, oh, this is like, and sometimes like a certain joinery that we use may not be relevant in your context. You have to develop. Actually, starting soon, I think next month, there's a big India nationwide contest on bamboo building, right? And we are kind of like part of the organizer. I'm the juror in the contest. So maybe people who are interested can look at it and, like,
Sure.
learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see a question that I think you've shown us actually. Do you think it's viable to adapt architectural methodologies for large-scale housing projects? And what you've shown us with the schools is already a start of that, or with the library. And the name of the conference, sorry. We can try to Google it, Nupur. We should find it.
Oh, you mean that contest?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's organized by IDHA.
Yeah.
So if you Google them, I'm sure it's not out yet. So maybe I'm like speaking too soon, but
Sure.
yeah.
So we
IDHA.
keep an eye on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to ask a question? Does anyone want to come on camera? And we have, I think we have 2 minutes to close actually. Okay.
May I? This is Lokesh.
Yeah, but just remember you have really just 1 minute. People will be coming into this room soon.
Yeah. Hi, Nripal. This is Lokesh. I just had a question that how were you dealing with this situation when all this COVID started, and how are you managing your projects then? And the people who you were working with, maybe the laborers, they must have shifted to their own places. So at that time, how are you doing?
Actually, like, whenever you work with these kind of materials, what we've realized, we thrive in crisis, like whenever we've always advocated living like traditionally, holistically. It's only during crisis that people go like, wow, yeah, you're right. Like now people are saying, oh, because of COVID, I want to go back to land and I want to like live holistically. So that's, so, I mean, like, and there's a lot of interest in our work. And so, I mean, the people are surviving, and luckily, it's a big family that we have. It's been difficult financially because we've not been able to work, but it's a family. We go through ups and downs. So before we end, like, I want to do a shameless publicity. Maybe if you are interested, you can visit us in our Instagram, and so we will update you on like all the competition that's coming up. And yeah, if you look at Abari, you'll find us.
Thank you so much, Nripal. I think that really opened a lot of our minds. And I look forward to seeing more and more earthen constructions in urban areas given to our audience. But also instead of losing these rich techniques in our rural areas, maybe we all would like to play a role in the preservation and propagation of natural building. Sorry. Okay. If you just give 30 seconds for vertical density, but I believe that you answered it. No, you said up to 2 floors, it holds itself, right?
And if you're gonna want to go more than 2 floors, then you combine with
I'm
modern
sorry.
materials.
It was not my point. It's someone who asked this at the beginning of the presentation about what do you think about the density, the vertical density that many people and also many urbanists want to promote to avoid to use too many lands, that now we are so many people that we should go higher and not to spread on the lands to preserve the biodiversity and the nature. Sorry.
I mean, it's a very long discussion. I don't believe we need to go higher, personally, but second, okay, if we have to go higher, we can use traditional and combination with modern materials, If we do that, then you can go as high as you can. Yeah.
Okay, with that, I think we'll close because it's time for hangout space in this room now. So we're having people coming in. Thank you so much, Nripal. And Gail says that we can debate later.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, man.
Pragnya,
Yes, Prachi.
you have to put the Facebook Live off because you're the host.
Oh,